Today's lesson is branding in a post-truth era. Post-truth was named by Oxford Dictionary as the word of the year in 2016. They said it was about debate framed mostly by emotional triggers, disconnected from detail. It kind of sort of makes sense. This is not a new idea, though. In fact, Winston Churchill talked about it in 1945 when Attlee defeated him at the election. And he talked about the fact that it was all based on lies, seduction, persuasion, hypocrisy, and flattery. So, this is a thing. Post-truth is a thing, but I think it's more relevant now, probably because of our protagonist here. But we're going through a evolution, and branding is a non-stop thing. So we've heard a lot about purpose, and I don't want to say that purpose is not a thing. I think it's an incredibly important thing, and I'll talk about that. But actually, as branding has evolved, and particularly now in this post-truth world where we're slightly disconnected from detail, I think a more important thing we should be talking about is principles, and that the next evolution of branding is about principles. So, a lesson, as it were. I'm sure you already know this, but branding is that point at which the identity that we push out meets with the image that our audience receives, and then it's the experience. It's the experience the reality that they experience. That's what branding is. It's a tool. It's a tool to sell stuff. And we heard about consistency, and yeah, consistency is quite important, but branding is not about putting 6-foot-high gold letters on everything. It's not that kind of consistency. It's more about a consistency of message. Just a little warning, I've got a lot of slides, so we're going to slide through them, so when it sees this means you might want to record it. So we've got this sales funnel, okay? So sales funnel, and as you talked about this in his talk, you've got the sales funnel, and there are all these points along the way that your business needs to involve in. And branding sort of sits there at the awareness bit. It creates awareness, it generates an interest. But what it's really good for is about this generating retention and advocacy. And so, there's been that evolution of branding that I talked about. It started, if we go back to that agricultural economy, or actually the pre-agricultural, when we're all living in villages and one guy made bread and one guy had cows and meat, and, branding then was about ownership. It's the Norse word, brander, means to burn. So branding is about that fire, that burning in. It was about creating something that said, that's mine. This is about my product, I own that. As the villages grew and our livestock wandered into other people's villages, how did we say that was mine? Well, we branded it. We moved forward then into an early industrial age, and by early, we're talking about the 12th and 13th century, you've got Venetians, artisans putting watermarks in. So now we're talking about quality. So it's still, branding has evolved from being about a product, although it is still about the product. Now branding is denoting a sense of quality about it. And when you had the Silk Road and the wines and spirits and things traveling around the world, you needed to know what was quality and what wasn't. In fact, the first trademark in the UK, 1876, is the Bast red triangle, and it still denotes quality now. So branding had evolved from product into quality. Then you get into this area of mass media. So it's still about branding, and it's still about ownership, and it's still about the product. But now when we've got mass communication and pamphlets and newspapers and then radio and TV and adverts, this is about belonging to something. So we're now buying into a promise of something. When Dove started creating their soap operas, we wanted to belong. That was a thing that we aspired to belong to. We wanted to be part of that. So it was about a promise. So branding has evolved beyond simply being about a product into being about a promise and belonging to something. Leap forward now to the end of the 20th century and into the 21st century and into the information age that we're all a part of now, and this one-to-one communication, and that's when you start seeing it's about people and influence, and this is where the purpose thing steps in, right? That if we've got one-to-one communication, we've got mass communication, but I can speak rather than through a big broadcast funnel, I can speak on a one-to-one basis, people are going to influence people. And so Simon Sinek, when he came out with this wasn't a new idea. People had been doing it long before he coined the phrase of start with the why, but it started meaning something because with the mass communication platforms that we've got, with the ability to speak to multiple people and have those direct conversations, you needed to stand for something. It was about the people you employ just as much, understanding that they were part of your customer cycle. So we've evolved. We've evolved beyond product into promise and now into purpose. And it's working. Right? Patagonia was started in the 70s. This is a guy building cleats. He was a rock climber. He was making these cleats, and he realized that, actually, I'm climbing up these faces of these rocks. I don't want to leave metal cleats in the walls. So I'll develop a product because I don't want to harm that environment. My purpose is to do what we do well, but leave no mark. Tom's, we've all heard the story of Tom's, where the guy where he's over in Argentina and he's learning to play polo on his gap year. But he goes out and he travels around and he meets this woman building shoes, making shoes for the local community. And he suddenly realizes, actually, I've taken this for granted. And I should use what my power, my influence, and my knowledge to help these people. So Tom started with a purpose of creating products to help people in need. And it's gone beyond just shoes. You can get glasses now. And if you buy a pair of glasses, they'll help people in less developed nations see. And if you buy their coffee, they'll start putting water into less developed nations. So they've got this purpose. Tata, the Indian engineering company, these are a brilliant set of company. So they realize they're huge infrastructure projects, and they'll go in, and when they build a power station, the community around them has to work in that power station. They are wholly dependent on the communities with which they serve. So they take 30% of all of their profits and invest it back into their local communities. They build schools, they build roads, they build police stations and universities. So they understand that their purpose isn't shareholder value, although they make a lot of shareholder value, but without having something to serve the community they're in, it's sort of null and void. They depend too much on the community. But this is where it starts getting a bit difficult, right? So Amazon, to be the Earth's most customer-centric company, is a great purpose. And I'm sure the people who work there, I know I really use it. I use it all the time, and it's a valuable utility for me. Is it the most user-centric company? This is destroying high streets. It's changing the way in which we shop. Are they considering how their purpose, which is a good purpose, is having a wider impact? Should they be considering that? Or Google, so to organize the world's information is a great purpose to have, and they're very good at it. However, to organize that world's information and then say, if you want to access it, you've now got to buy AdWords off us, you've got to keep up with the different algorithm changes we're making, we make it more difficult now to access that world's information. And the principles by which they're now operating start to look a little bit shaky. Or Facebook. Their purpose of bringing the world closer together is a brilliant, brilliant purpose. And one might argue it has worked immeasurably with over, 2 billion users now? However, when we look at the Cambridge Analytica scandal and actually what came out of that and the way in which when you get on Facebook, there are certain extremes of opinion, and there are people squabbling, and then the bots are running wild over it, and they're creating a dichotomy, and it's not necessarily bringing the world closer together. And actually, it's perhaps forcing the world further apart, with Brexit being blamed on these sorts of things, or with, again, Trump. So actually, although this is a great purpose, the principles by which they're delivering it, have they been fully thought through? And again, it carries on along this way that, yes, it's brilliant to have a purpose, and connecting people and uniting the world is a great purpose. However, I'm sure this gentleman probably didn't feel connected. He certainly wasn't united with his world. And the principles by which United Airlines were trying to live their purpose, we might disagree somewhat. And make America great again. to the 300 million people who live in America, this is probably a great purpose and the sort of purpose that they can all get behind. But if it's not thought through, and if it's not delivered, and you don't think about what the implications are of your purpose, then it can lead to some horrific incidents. Or, this is not a thing that is poorly thought through all the time, but unless you concentrate on how your principles are going to be, how your purpose is going to be delivered, and the principles by which you deliver it, certain things can happen, okay? So, Lush, they make soap. They sell soap, bath bombs mainly, but soap. Their purpose is to have happy people making happy soap, putting faces on our products, and making our mums proud. I mean, that's my purpose. Just to make my mum proud. That's what I do all day, every day. Well, I don't actually. I probably rarely make my mum proud. But as a purpose, this is a great purpose to have. And off the back of it, they've got 900 stores in over 60 countries around the world. They are a phenomenal company. And their purpose has lived through everything that they've done. They are 100% vegetarian now. I think they're aiming to be 100% vegan very soon. They've always been about ethical buying practices. They've always been against animal testing. They're trying to get naked packaging now. In fact, their store in Milan is a fully no packaging whatsoever in the store. So they've got this purpose that they're living through. In fact, Jack Constantine, their chief digital officer, was at the Next Web in Amsterdam earlier this year, and he talked about Lush as being, we are a company of activists that make cosmetics. So this has always been a thing that has gone through everything that they've done. The homepage a few months ago had this film that they pumped money into, and this was as a response to Cambridge Analytica. They felt that their customers needed to be better informed. They were going to be activists in this struggle against how our democracy is being managed. This is a company that makes bath bombs. Okay? So you can understand that maybe they are a company of activists. And it's always been this way. They were against badger culling, as we all are. Oh, we might not be. But, I don't know if badgers ever featured in Lush's supply chain. I don't believe they were ever intrinsic to the manufacture of bath bombs. But it was part of their spirit. It was part of their core being that they were against they were activists. They wanted to be part of activists. They were built on a promise and a purpose of being activists. And when they launched the Spy Cops campaign, this was the right thing, or could have been seen to be the right move for them. Okay, this fitted with their purpose. This was about making their mums proud. This was about, actually, we are more than a cosmetics company. We've seen an injustice and we want to be activists against it. However, the principles by which they delivered it were not necessarily particularly well thought through. And that this picture of the police was put up in the front shop windows of all of their stores around the UK, it created a furore about what Lush should and shouldn't be doing. And it went beyond their purpose. And it was because, I believe, they hadn't completely thought through the implications of their work. Their principles by which they operate and the principles by which they deliver their marketing hadn't been completely thought through. And ironically, at that same conference where Jack talked about being a company of activists, he also said, we make sure that all our staff bring their moral compass to work. I don't know what happened around the Spy Cops thing. I think maybe a few people might have mislaid their moral compass when they thought that this was the right project to put out there, the right campaign to run. Because brands are built on what people say about you. It's not what you say about yourself. So no matter how many times you can put your purpose out there, and you put it out there, and it's your message that you send out there, it's how that message is received. And it's about what people say about you. So we've evolved. So we've got products, and it's about quality, and then it was buying into a promise and about belonging, and then it was about purpose. But now it's about principles. It's about the principles by what you act. So you couldn't do a talk about purpose or principles without talking about Nike and their purpose of using the power of sport to move the world forward. We believe in a fair, sustainable future, one where everyone thrives on a healthy planet and a level playing field. So that's a great purpose, and their principles by which they delivered it, they were staying true to them. Now, they took a 3% dip in their stock over the week following. Adidas, their biggest competitor, took a 2.5% drop. But actually what this did, by sticking to their principles, by believing, hold on, we could stay out of this political argument, or actually, if we believe in a level playing field, then we should step forward, we should do something, but we should do it carefully and considered. And as a result now, they have a 90% approval rating amongst African Americans. They have a 65% approval rating amongst the under 35, which is their core demographic. And their stock is now trading higher than it's ever traded before. And they earned $43 million worth, or the equivalent of, in advertising by taking their purpose and applying some principles to it. But actually, I didn't really want to talk about Nike. To make it more relevant to the people in Exeter or the people in the UK, I want to talk about these guys. This is an agency called Signal. They're based up in Scotland, in Leith. They employ 150 people. They went through a process earlier this year where they were thinking about their purpose. They make ads, right? They're a digital marketing agency. They do some advertising. They do a lot of advertising. They run campaigns. But they went through this process thinking, hold on, if we sell branding, we should look at our branding. And they thought that if we do right by our culture, we'll do right by our clients. So they came up with their purpose. And their purpose is to be the place where people do the best work of their careers. They don't talk about marketing, they don't talk about advertising, they don't talk about clients, they talk about their people. They're an ad agency, that's a given. They don't need that in their purpose. Their purpose is, when you come here, this is the best place you're going to do, the place you're going to do your best work. And they then came up with 4 key principles by which they're going to deliver this. So this is about people having a long view, that actually they'll come in and they'll work, but they're thinking about next year. They're thinking about the year after. They want to plan for their future. They want to know where they fit in this thing. And as their company that they work for, as their bosses, they need to bear that in mind. They want to talk about people constantly learning, coming to things like this, being inspired and being pushed to learn new stuff and being given the freedom to learn new stuff. And that it's about the team that you're working in. And this idea of flexible working, that actually the 9 to 5 doesn't work for everyone, but that doesn't exclude them from working there. Not once in any of these principles have they talked about clients, have they talked about money, have they talked about what they're going to do. They only talk about how their principles impact on their people to deliver their purpose. But they've thought it through. They've thought it through long and hard. And there's a brilliant article on Medium that Phil Adams, the Chief Strategy Officer, has written about the process they went through here. But they understood that actually if we get our purpose and principles right, and the management lead by example, and we run this by example, then we will create a set of shared beliefs and some customary behaviors that will create a vibrant culture. When you've got a vibrant culture, you create great work. And if you've got great work, you've got happy clients. And if you've got happy clients, they will pay. They will pay money. So they didn't have to think about the end result. They took their purpose, and then they came up with the principles by which they were going to apply it. And these weren't just quick, off-the-cuff principles. They thought about it. They thought long and hard about it. They realized that having a purpose wasn't enough. They needed to have principles. Because successful brands have that integrity, and that's the purpose bit, right? They know what they stand for. They are honest and transparent. They're consistent and reliable. But above all else, successful brands now have principles. The way branding has evolved: product, promise, purpose, principles. Or failing that, just kindness as competitive advantage. That's it. Thank you.